Welcome. I'm Mike the Burge from the Ultimate Guide to Chasing.com, and today we're talking about the Advantage Player. In this video, I'm going to cover progressive systems, an NFL betting system I used to make 150% last year, and how to count cards in the game of blackjack. Okay, what is the Advantage Player? An Advantage Player is someone who uses a statistical advantage to gain an edge in a game of chance. The most classic example of this is the casinos themselves. For example, a roulette wheel appears to have a 50-50 chance of hitting on black and red. This is an illusion. There are two squares that are green. They're called the 0 and the double 0. If you hit either one of these squares, then you lose. So the actual odds are approximately 47 to 53 instead of 50-50. In sports betting, you have to bet slightly more than what you win. The odds are 11 to 10, so you have to win 52.4% of the time just to break even. In the long term, the Advantage Player knows that these small statistical advantages are going to produce money, which brings us to our next section. What is the difference between an investor and a gambler? The Advantage Players don't consider themselves to be gamblers. They consider themselves to be investors. And, well, the difference is that a gambler goes into a game of chance knowing that there's an edge against them. But they'll gamble anyways in hopes that they can beat this edge. The investor does not do this. They use proven mathematical principles in order to gain an advantage over these games. Okay, what is a progressive system? Simply put, progressive system, you double your money each time until you win. There's a lot of variations of these, and I have a lot more variations on my website, theultimateguidetochasing.com. We're going to keep it simple. There's a few different names for this. It's called chasing, the progressive system, and the martingale system. It's all the same thing. Okay, I have a simple demonstration over here of a progressive system. You bet $10, you lose 10. You bet the next time, you double your bet. You bet $20 and you lose again, you've lost a total of $30. You bet a third time, doubling again, now you've lost a total of $70. On your fourth bet, you finally win, and then you win $80, therefore you erase the $70 that you had lost previously, and you have a $10 profit. At this point, you start over again. Okay, now we're going to talk about how to use progressive systems in NFL betting. I'm going to show you a specific strategy in order to do this. And before we get started, it's important for me to tell you that if you're using a progressive system without an edge, the losses can be catastrophic. However, if you do have an edge, they can be very profitable. With that said, how do the books create their edge? They use two things. They use something called a point spread and something called the juice or the vigorish. Now, the point spread, I have an example up here. This is pulled from the 2012 season. We had the Denver Broncos as 9-point favorites facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, the actual score on this game was 31 to 23. The Broncos won by 8 points. However, the spread was 9 points, so if you bet on the Buccaneers, you would have won. This is the entire point of having a point spread. It makes you think twice about whether to bet on the favorite or whether to bet on the underdog. Now, the second part of this system is called the juice or the vigorish. You have to bet slightly more than what you will win. It's typically 11 to 10 odds against the spread. Gives the house edge 52.4%. Now, what that means is you have to win 52.4% of the time just to break even. Now, typically speaking, most people can only pick 50% over the long term. And the interesting thing about this is the way the edge is created is different from anything else that you experience inside of a casino. You know, games of chance, the roll of the dice, the spin of the roulette wheel, those are actual chance. Well, the point spread is driven by public opinion, and it actually fluctuates. I have a video on this I call the pendulum cycle theory. Inside of this, you actually get bubble patterns, just like the stock market or real estate. When a large favorite loses against the spread, what happens is the public will react and they will actually back off from that team. And then the team comes back, plays harder, and then the cycle repeats itself. These cycles can be short, they can be long, but they definitely exist and you can track them. Okay, what I'm going to talk about next sounds so ridiculously obvious. However, this is a key point in order to make this system work. Now we're talking about crowd psychology. When the public bets on any team, if they're betting on a favorite, they expect that favorite to win. Not just the game, but actually beat the spread. And the betting public also expects the underdog to lose. Not just the game, but against the spread. When an upset happens, the public reacts to that. And they react in a way that's exactly the opposite of what they should do. Okay? When you have an elite team that loses, especially to an underdog, I use an example later on where the San Francisco 49ers, who went to the Super Bowl last year, lost against the St. Louis Rams, who is one of the worst teams in the NFL. This trend creates an advantage play by using something called 10-point teasers and the progressive system. The 10-point teasers and progressive systems act as a kind of insurance to help you get more of an edge in order to beat the spread. A 10-point teaser is a unique strategy to the NFL. It is like a parlay in which you must bet on 3 teams and they all must win in order for you to win the bet. However, the unique thing about a teaser is that it allows you to take 10 points off the spread of each team that you choose. Now, the 10-point teaser system that I'm talking about, step 1, you're going to find 3 teams involved in an upset. Bet on an elite team that was upset the next week. Bet against a bad team that upsets a good team the next week. Step 2, you're going to put these 3 teams into a 10-point teaser. Step 3, if the teaser loses, you're going to use the progressive system to repeat the strategy. I typically use a 3-tier progression in order to do this. When doubling, you must compensate for the juice. Teasers have steeper odds as 12 to 10 instead of 11 to 10. You want to multiply your losing bet times 2.2 to figure out the next bet for the next week. The first step that you need to do when setting up these 10-point teasers is to make a list of elite teams and underdogs. And this is my list for 2012. Now, this list might work for you, it might not. You just need to make your own list if it doesn't. As you can see over here, I have the elite teams. I try to pick one per conference. It doesn't always work that way because sometimes the good teams are stacked inside of one conference and the bad teams are stacked inside of one conference. Have a couple of stars down here. Like you can see, I chose the Atlanta Falcons. This is the NFC South. Normally I would have chosen the New Orleans Saints, but they had Bountygate going on and they didn't have their coach. They didn't have some of their key players, so I decided to take the Atlanta Falcons over the Saints. Over here, written in red, you can probably tell, if you know anything about football, that the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tennessee Titans are not in the NFC. And the reason why I chose them is because, well, the AFC was stacked with some bad teams and were actually worse than the teams that were in the divisions that I was looking at. The NFC North, that was a stacked division. You had the Giants, you had the Eagles, which were supposed to be the dream team. However, I could have chosen them for a bad team this year. And let's see, the Washington Redskins, which I had been relying on for several seasons, actually got good. They picked up RG3 and a few other key players and did very well this season. So I chose to put the Kansas City Chiefs in place of that division. And then I put the Tennessee Titans in place of any team. I said NFC North. This is the NFC East, and this would be the NFC North. So I replaced both of those with AFC teams because they were so bad. Okay, now what you can see, I have 8 teams in each the elite bracket and the bad bracket, and then underneath I also have a couple teams that I chose as backups. Now, between all of these teams, at least one should be involved in an upset. Okay, now I have an actual example from the 2012 season. If you remember from my list of elite teams and bad teams, the 49ers were on my list of elite teams. They actually went to the Super Bowl. And the Rams were on the list of my bad teams. Okay, in Week 10, the San Francisco 49ers faced the St. Louis Rams. And the 49ers were 14-point favorites in that game. The actual score, what happened is they tied in overtime, and they were never able to break that tie, so it actually ended as 24-24. So the Rams definitely shocked the world in this, because nobody expected the Rams to be able to hold a candle to the 49ers. Okay, now you need 3 teams in order to create a 10-point teaser. We actually get 2 teams from this because the 49ers are elite and the Rams are bad. But we need one more, so I come down here and the New England Patriots were facing the Buffalo Bills. And the Patriots were 14-point favorites in that game. Okay, the actual score was 37-31, so they won by 6 points. They won the game, but they lost against the spread, so we expect them to come back the next week. Okay, so over here, you have a list of 3 teams that I have. 2 of them are elite, 1 of them are bad. So we're going to bet on the San Francisco 49ers for the next week. We are going to fade, which means to bet against the Rams the next week, and we are going to bet on the New England Patriots for the next week. Okay, so you come down here to Week 11, and let's see what actually happened. Now, San Francisco was facing the Chicago Bears. They were 3-point favorites. The actual score was 32-7, so they annihilated the Bears that week. The St. Louis Rams versus the Jets. Now you have to remember, we're going to bet on the Jets. We're not going to bet on the Rams because the Rams are a bad team. Okay, the Jets were 3.5 underdogs in that game. The actual score was the Rams 13, the Jets 27. Okay, and then finally we're going to bet on the New England Patriots. And they were facing the Indianapolis Colts in that game. They were 10.5 favorites, and the actual score was 59-24. Now, when you create a 10-point teaser, you actually get to add 10 points to the spread of each team that you choose. So, we come over here. The San Francisco 49ers were -3 favorites. We add 10 points, so now they become +7 underdogs. You add 10 points to the +3.5 underdog New York Jets, and they become 13.5 underdogs. New England was favored by 10.5 points. You add the 10, and it comes out to just 0.5 favorites. So all they needed to do was win by 1 point, and you would have won that bet. Now, if you take a look, every single one of these games actually beat the spread straight up. Not just with the 10-point teaser, but straight against the spread. This doesn't happen all the time. However, I've seen it enough to know that it happens quite often. So, was this just a fluke, or does this kind of thing happen a lot? Let's take a look at another example of this, and we'll see. Okay, in Week 13, we have the 49ers facing the Rams again. Now, I'm choosing this example because it just makes things easier. I get to choose 2 teams out of 1 game. So, with that said, let's move on. Okay, the 49ers are 8.5 favorites to beat the Rams in Week 13. Now, the Rams actually beat the 49ers in this game. The score was 13-16. So, over here, we're going to put the 49ers in, and we're going to put the Rams in. We're going to fade them. So, we need a 3rd team. And over here, we have the Denver Broncos that were 9-point favorites facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The actual score of that game was 31-23, so they won by 8 points, therefore losing to the spread. So we're going to put Denver as our third team. Now we come down here to week 14. San Francisco 49ers are 11.5 favorites to beat the Miami Dolphins. The St. Louis Rams were facing the Buffalo Bills, and Buffalo Bills were -3 favorites to win that game. The Denver Broncos were 11-point favorites to beat the Oakland Raiders. Okay, so if you come over here to the 10-point teaser, we actually get to add 10 points to each of these point spreads. So 11.5 comes down to 1.5 favorites for the 49ers. We're betting against the Rams, so we're on the Buffalo Bills in this game. So the -3 comes up to +7, so they go from being a favorite to being a +7 underdog in a 10-point teaser. And the Denver Broncos have an 11-point spread, so we add 10 to that, and they come down to -1 favorites to beat Oakland. So in this example, and I like this example because it shows how the 10-point teasers can actually give you a benefit above and beyond the actual point spread. So Denver was the only one to actually beat the spread in this game. So up here you had San Francisco that was 11.5 favorites to beat the Dolphins. They beat them by 10 points. However, in the 10-point teaser, they only needed 1.5 points in order to win. So despite the fact that we lost against the spread over here, we actually end up winning over here. Now the same situation occurs in the Rams faces Buffalo. Rams beat Buffalo 15-12. Buffalo was -3-point favorites. Now, if you had bet that game straight up against the spread, you would have missed by 6 points on Buffalo. However, you come over here, we get to add 10 points. They're +7, so we actually are within 4 points of winning, and that's well within the range that we need to be in. So the 10-point teaser actually wins this, whereas if you had bet against the spread on these, you would have lost.